The bitter wind howls across a white horizon. Snow whirls in every direction, swallowing sound and light as the temperature plummets to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. In this frozen silence, the land itself seems to hold its breath. Imagine standing there, your breath turning instantly to ice, your skin burning from the cold, the air so sharp it cuts your lungs. A modern human, even wrapped in layers of high-tech clothing, would survive only a few hours out here before the cold claimed them. And yet 30,000 years ago, entire families not only endured this world, they thrived in it. They raised children beneath skies of endless snow, built homes strong enough to defy blizzards, and created art that still takes our breath away today. How did they survive and even thrive in the harshest winters the Earth has ever known? How did people with nothing but stone tools and animal skins outsmart nature at its most unforgiving? The answer lies not in caves or chance, but in engineering, Ice Age engineering. Our Paleolithic ancestors were not merely primitive hunters cowering by a fire. They were the first Arctic engineers, masters of survival, who turned nature's dangers into their greatest defense. They read the wind, shaped the earth, and built warmth from bones and frost. In this journey, we'll step back into that ancient cold, tracing the genius of those who learned to make the Ice Age their home. From the mammoth bone houses of Ukraine to the insulated shelters of Dolní Věstonice and Gonci, we'll uncover the architecture, the science, and the spirit that kept humanity alive when the world itself was frozen. Because to understand how we conquered winter is to understand what makes us human. Long before the Ice Age reached its fiercest grip, when mammoths still roamed across endless plains and saber-toothed cats hunted beneath grey skies, a small group of early humans stood at the edge of the frozen forest near what we now call Kostroma in western Russia. It was around 800,000 years ago, an age when survival itself was a daily battle against wind, hunger, and cold. The land was harsh, unforgiving, and deadly for any creature that failed to adapt. But these people would do something extraordinary. They would learn not to fight the cold, but to use it. Archaeologists discovered traces of circular depressions carved deep into the earth, some more than 8 feet across and 2 or 3 meters deep. These were not random holes or animal dens. They were the foundations of the first known cold weather shelters, semi-subterranean homes dug carefully into the frozen ground. By burrowing below the frost line, these early humans discovered a secret that would change human history. The earth itself could be a blanket. At depths of 6 to 8 feet, the temperature of the soil remained far more stable than the air above, often 20 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit warmer even in brutal winters. This principle, now known as earth insulation, became the foundation for all later cold weather engineering. It was a moment of brilliance born not from strength, but from observation. They realized that while the air froze, the ground held its warmth. While the wind howled, the soil stayed still. So they shaped the earth into their ally. Using sharpened stone tools, they carved smooth walls of packed clay and reinforced them with animal bones and wooden stakes. The entrance sloped downward, shielding them from direct gusts of icy wind. Inside, they layered grasses and hides along the earthen floor, creating a space that trapped heat and kept out moisture. It was simple, yet remarkably effective, a perfect balance between nature and human design. For perhaps the first time, humanity was not merely reacting to its environment, it was redesigning it. The people of Kostroma may not have known words like insulation or thermal mass, but they understood their effects. They had discovered that the world could be engineered not by defying it, but by understanding it deeply. They didn't fight nature, they learned to work with it. That single shift in thinking marked a turning point in our story as a species. Every shelter, every piece of clothing, every innovation that would follow in the next hundreds of thousands of years began here with a hole in the ground and a realization that survival could be built. In that frozen silence, as the wind swept above their hidden homes, the first spark of human engineering flickered to life, and it would carry forward through every glacier, every storm, every winter to come. As the Ice Age tightened its frozen grip across Eurasia, human ingenuity reached a new peak. From the plains of modern-day Ukraine to the frozen valleys of western Russia, ancient builders began creating something the world had never seen before: entire houses made from the bones of giants. At Mezhirich, Gonsi and Kostenki, archaeologists unearthed ghostly circles of mammoth skulls, tusks and long bones, arranged with mathematical precision. These weren't random bone piles left by hunters. They were blueprints of architecture, monuments of survival, crafted by the first Arctic engineers. Each of these Ice Age dwellings was a marvel of design. The largest measured more than 7 meters across, wide enough to shelter extended families of 8 to 12 people through the endless dark of winter. Around each main structure, smaller pits and depressions formed a network of activity zones, workspaces for shaping tools, areas for drying hides, and storage pits for frozen meat. Nothing was wasted and nothing was accidental. Every curve of a tusk, every placement of a skull had purpose. The construction began from the ground up. Mammoth skulls, massive and dense, were laid into circular foundations to anchor the base against wind and frost. The builders then interlocked curved tusks and long leg bones into an arching frame that formed a dome-like skeleton. Hundreds of smaller bones were wedged between the larger ones, sealing the gaps and reinforcing the structure's strength. Over this framework, layers of thick hide stitched together with sinew and pierced by bone needles formed a flexible, weatherproof shell. Inside, the builders layered smaller pelts from wolves, foxes and hares to create insulation. Around the base, they packed snow and earth to prevent drafts from creeping in, and within this bone and hide dome warmth took on life again. Archaeologists found multiple hearths distributed evenly across the floor, small, well-managed fires that balanced heat without filling the air with smoke. Each hearth marked a space of activity, one for cooking, one for toolmaking, one for tending the embers through long frozen nights. What's astonishing is the efficiency and planning behind these shelters. Building one was not the work of a single family. It required coordination, teamwork, and shared knowledge, hallmarks of an organized society. The Pavlovian culture that flourished across Central and Eastern Europe around 25,000 years ago showed exactly this kind of division of labor hunters, builders, artisans, and caretakers working in rhythm. Gonsi itself offers evidence of such coordination. Multiple bone houses built side by side, suggesting small communities bound by cooperation and shared survival. Even their timing reflected precision. These shelters were not thrown together in panic at the first snow. They were carefully planned during late summer or early autumn, when weather still allowed for heavy labor. Experimental reconstructions suggest that each house took 2 to 3 weeks to complete, requiring a team of 8 to 10 adults. When spring came, the occupants dismantled their homes, folded the hides, and cached the bones in nearby pits, ready to rebuild when the next winter returned. This seasonal rhythm of construction use and preservation reveals minds capable of strategic planning and resource management far beyond what most imagine for prehistoric people. If today's world has its NASA engineers designing life support systems for space, then 25,000 years ago, humanity had its Arctic engineers crafting life support systems on Earth. They understood physics without formulas, thermodynamics without theory. From death and decay, they created safety and warmth. In the heart of the Ice Age, surrounded by the bones of the mammoth, they built not just shelters, but symbols of endurance. From the remains of the dead, they raised homes for the living, and in doing so they proved that even in a world of ice, the fire of human creativity would never freeze. Inside those bone shelters, warmth was not luck, it was design. Thousands of years before anyone spoke of engineering or architecture, our Ice Age ancestors had already mastered the physics of heat. At the site of Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, archaeologists uncovered fragments of what can only be described as ancient insulation technology. The walls of these winter shelters were built with multiple layers, each serving a precise thermal purpose. Closest to the living space was a lining of animal hides, always placed with the fur facing inward. The soft hairs trapped pockets of warm air around the occupants' bodies, creating a microclimate of comfort against the bitter cold. Behind that came a layer of dried grasses and moss-like, fibrous materials that wickered away moisture and added another barrier against heat loss. Finally, an outer layer of woven mats made from reeds and strips of bark acted as both armor and lungs for the shelter, strong enough to resist wind, yet breathable enough to let trapped moisture escape before it could freeze. What's astonishing is that this triple-layer insulation system mirrors the principles of modern building science. They achieved what we now call vapor control, moisture management, and thermal layering, all with nothing but natural materials and instinct honed by survival. They didn't guess. They learned through generations of observation, adjusting and improving, until their designs balanced warmth, dryness, and durability. But insulation was only half the equation. Without proper ventilation, even the warmest shelter could turn deadly. Moisture from breath cooking and melting snow could freeze overnight, forming ice sheets on the walls. To solve this, our ancestors designed airflow systems that any modern Arctic engineer would admire. Small openings near ground level allowed fresh air to creep in, while larger vents near the roof released warm, damp air. This created a natural convection current, a silent cycle, that kept the interior dry, breathable, and stable. At some sites like Kostroma, archaeologists even found evidence of adjustable flaps made from bone plates and hide covers that could open or close with the weather. These ancient air valves gave them control over their environment in ways both subtle and brilliant. They had transformed raw nature into a living machine. And then came the question of fire. On the treeless steppes, wood was scarce. Instead, they turned to what nature gave them in abundance: mammoth dung, dried grasses, and even bones. When properly prepared, these fuels burned hot and long, producing steady heat with minimal smoke. Bone fires could glow for hours, radiating warmth from their mineral cores like natural heat stones. Every flicker of flame was a triumph of adaptation. When you sit in a heated home today, surrounded by insulation vents and quiet warmth, you are living within the same principles they discovered tens of thousands of years ago. The very science that keeps your home warm today was born in a hut of bones, crafted by minds that refused to freeze and hearts that turned survival into art. Step inside one of these Ice Age shelters and you would find not silence but life. The air would hum with low voices, the crackle of fire, and the rhythmic sound of tools striking bone or flint. At the very center burned a hearth, a circle of glowing embers, the beating heart of the home. Around it, families gathered, closed their faces, illuminated by the orange dance of flame. The elderly sat nearest to the warmth, wrapped in layers of hide, while the youngest children curled beside them, their tiny breaths mingling with the smoke. Every ember meant survival. Every spark meant another day won against the cold. Beyond the fire's glow, the builders and artisans of the family worked in patches of light that leaked through tiny openings in the hide walls. There, in this dim warmth, tools were shaped and dreams were carved. Stone blades were chipped to perfection, bone needles repaired, and broken tools reborn in hands hardened by winter. The soft tapping of flint was not just the sound of work, it was the rhythm of persistence. Food was stored with equal intelligence. In the frozen ground beside each shelter, short tunnels led to natural cold traps, pits dug into the permafrost, where meat could be preserved for months. These underground freezers kept food fresh, even when storms raged outside, a system so efficient that modern Arctic communities still use the same principle. Nothing about their lives was random. Every detail, from the arrangement of sleeping spots to the design of the vents above the fire, was a product of observation, cooperation, and care. And yet, even in this harsh world, the human spirit reached beyond survival. At Dolní Věstonice, archaeologists discovered delicate Venus figurines, small clay sculptures of the human form fired thousands of years before pottery was ever thought to exist. They were works of art created in the heart of the Ice Age, proof that imagination burned brighter than any flame. The same hands that stitched hides and built shelters also shaped beauty from clay and memory. Through long months of darkness, when the sun vanished and snow buried the earth, these people still told stories. They painted images on bones, carved patterns into ivory, and sang beside the fire. Each tale was a thread tying one generation to the next, preserving not just how to live, but why. Rituals, songs, and art became their warmth when the world outside froze solid. Psychologists today know how isolation can erode the mind. The people of the Ice Age knew this too, though they had no words for it. They fought it with creativity, with laughter, with shared purpose. Their shelters were not just walls, they were sanctuaries for the human soul. Even in endless winter, they found warmth in creation. Their art was not luxury, it was medicine. Their stories were not entertainment, they were survival. Inside those bone houses, surrounded by firelight and snow, humanity remembered itself. What those Ice Age families built beneath storms of snow was far more than shelter. It was the blueprint of human technology. The same ideas that kept them alive still pulse through every modern wall, every heating system, every home that stands against the cold. Their knowledge became invisible, folded into the fabric of our civilization, yet its roots reach back to the frozen steppes where humanity first learned to master its environment. The principles they discovered, insulation, ventilation, and thermal balance, remain the foundation of modern engineering. Every home that traps warmth in winter and breathes in summer echoes their ingenuity. The simple act of layering materials for protection, fir moss bark, has evolved into fiberglass foam and vapor barriers, yet the logic is the same. They didn't build blindly, they tested, refined, and perfected. Each generation passed down what worked and discarded what didn't, creating the first chain of technological inheritance. Today, those same survival strategies appear everywhere. Emergency relief shelters, designed for disaster zones, use multi-layer fabric systems nearly identical to the Mammoth bone houses. Military field camps and Arctic research stations rely on controlled ventilation and compact heating concepts first born in Paleolithic mines. Even the Antarctic bases that brave -80°F temperatures apply the same physics, burying structures partially underground, circulating air through layered vents, and using reflective insulation to conserve energy. What began as survival has become science. Modern studies continue to reveal how advanced those prehistoric builders truly were. Excavations documented by Smithsonian researchers and analyses of Pavlovian and Malta-Buret cultural sites confirm that their shelters achieved astonishing thermal efficiency. Reconstructions of mammoth bone dwellings have shown that with only small fires and proper insulation, interior temperatures could remain 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the surrounding air, a performance equal to or better than many modern Arctic tents. They achieved comfort and safety with no machines, no electricity, and no blueprints, only deep understanding of nature's laws. But perhaps their greatest gift was not material, it was mental. Their innovations depended on teaching memory and precision. A single mistake in building a winter shelter could mean death, so the knowledge had to be passed flawlessly from elders to youth. That process of sharing exact information, of teaching craft technique and reason, is what shaped us into a technological species. It was the beginning of education, of engineering, of culture itself. Every time we design for protection, we echo their wisdom. Every insulated wall and thermostated room is a silent monument to those who first transformed nature into home. The same fire that kept them alive still burns in us, the human will to build, adapt, and endure. From bone and frost, they created warmth and meaning. From their struggle, we inherited not only comfort, but the courage to imagine. And as long as we keep learning from the past, that ancient fire will never die. From the first sunken shelters of Kostroma to the great bone houses of Gonsi, the story of humanity in the Ice Age is not one of misery, it is one of mastery. Across thousands of frozen miles, our ancestors took what nature gave them, earth, bone, hide, and fire, and turned hardship into invention. They carved safety out of danger, transformed cold into comfort, and shaped a world that refused to kill them into one that helped them live. It is easy to look back and see them as primitive, huddled around flickering fires. But what they truly built was far greater than warmth. It was wisdom. From the soil beneath their feet to the sky above their shelters, they learned that survival was never about strength. It was about imagination. The power to see what could be, not just what was. The courage to build a home when the world itself seemed determined to take it away. And their imagination lives on in us. Every thermostat, we adjust every insulated wall that shields us from winter. Every system that keeps warmth circulating through our homes owes a silent debt to those Ice Age engineers. They were the first to turn raw environment into design, the first to shape the planet not by force, but by understanding. So the next time you sit inside on a cold night, wrapped in comfort, while the wind howls outside, remember the warmth around you was born from their brilliance. Those ancient builders lit a flame that still burns today, in every act of invention, in every spark of creativity, in every human heart that refuses to surrender. They didn't just survive the Ice Age, they built the foundations of human resilience,